What happens when one of Hollywood's most private and beloved stars sits across from a talk show host who believes she can push any button without consequences? What you are about to witness is the moment when Keanu Reeves' legendary composure is shaken for the first time in a live broadcast. And it all began with a seemingly harmless question about his private life. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation that left the entire studio in breathless silence, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your opinion in the comments, because this story questions everything you thought you knew about German talk shows. The atmosphere in the studio of ZDF Magazine Royal that Friday night was noticeably tense. Keanu Reeves had been invited to talk about his new movie and his foundation for youth development. But something in his gaze revealed that he had no patience for Dunja Hayali's usual pointed inquiries today. The star sat upright in the guest chair, his shoulders tense, his jaw slightly clenched, an expression that moviegoers knew well when he had to deliver a serious line. Hayali, however, ignored her guest's tension and began with her familiar professional smile. Keanu, honestly, the world wonders, how do you manage to maintain such a high-level career for so many years while keeping your personal life so private? Or are there perhaps a few headlines you'd like to share with us? Reeves' eyes narrowed briefly. His voice, however, remained calm. Dunja, I'm here to talk about my projects, not my private life. Let's please stick to that. But Hayali did not give up. Her smile now seemed provocative. Oh, come on, Keanu, you know that when you're in the public eye, you can't expect everything to remain a secret. The tabloids are writing about tensions at home. Would you like to clarify what's true? The audience shifted uncomfortably. When Reeves finally spoke, there was a cutting tone in his voice. I have already said it. We are here to talk about my work, not my family. One is professional, the other remains private. Hayali smirked, but her tone became colder. You know, Keanu, for someone who seems so detached on screen, you appear quite sensitive when it comes to simple questions. I'm not asking about your tax returns. Sensitive? Reeves repeated, and his otherwise controlled tone took on a noticeably frosty note. No, Dunja, that's called setting boundaries. Something you might want to think about. For a brief moment, the moderator's smile faltered. Then it returned, broader than ever. Wow, I guess it's not your day, huh? Maybe we should rather talk about your discipline. We hear you even stay in character on set. It must be hard on the people around you. Reeves's hands, which had previously rested loosely on the armrests, tensed up. What are you trying to imply with that? Nothing, absolutely nothing, Hayali said with feigned innocence. There are just voices in the industry that say you can be, well, quite intense. Some call it demanding, others a bit unapproachable, or, how should I put it, emotionally inaccessible. The temperature in the studio was palpable. Reeves leaned slightly forward. His voice was barely audible but urgent. Did you just call me unstable on a live show? Unstable? Reeves's voice broke through the tense silence like a thunderclap. Behind the cameras, producers gestured frantically, but Hayali was too caught up in her own entertainment frenzy to back down. Hey, I'm just repeating what's being said. You know how this industry works. Maybe if you were a little more open about your mindset, people wouldn't have to speculate so much. My thought process, Reeves said slowly, is none of your business. Just like my private life, my family life, or anything that has nothing to do with why I'm here. He leaned slightly forward, his voice now cutting and calm. But if you're so interested in difficult behavior, Dunja, then I have a counter question. How many guests have already walked off your show? How many have explicitly asked not to appear on your show? Precisely because of such provocations that you disguise as entertainment. Hayali's smile was no longer quite so confident. I don't know what you mean. We're just having a conversation. A conversation? Reeves's voice grew louder. Some audience members instinctively recoiled. You call this a conversation? You've spent the last 10 minutes trying to corner me just to provoke some dramatic reaction on camera. You've questioned my professionalism, my mental stability, my private life, all with that fake smile on your face. The studio was now silent, only the cameras whirred quietly. For the first time in years, Dunja Hayali looked visibly unsettled. Keanu, I think you're overreacting a little. Overreacting? Reeves slowly stood up. His presence suddenly filled the entire studio. You want to see overreaction? You want to see the detached actor everyone always talks about? Hayali instinctively leaned back. Keanu, let's take a deep breath. No, Dunja, now we talk, but not about me, about you. Reeves took a step closer to the desk, and his tone became razor sharp. You invite people under the pretense of promoting their work, and then you spend your time exposing them for your audience's applause. You dig into their private lives, repeat rumors as if they were facts, and pretend it's all just harmless fun. Hayali tried to regain control. Come on, this is live television. Things can get a little heated sometimes, but that doesn't what? Reeves's voice was now deep and powerful, with the authority of a captain calling his team to order. Doesn't mean you can't confront a bully when you see one. Doesn't mean I can't defend myself when you try to damage my reputation. The camera operators no longer moved. Even the director didn't know whether to continue or cut to a commercial break. And Hayali, who could usually diffuse any moment with sarcasm, had nothing left in her arsenal. Reeves stepped closer to the desk. His body language had completely changed. This was no longer the composed actor. This was someone who had seen a lot in his career. Victories, defeats, betrayal. And now he was tired of being made a fool of in a TV studio. Do you know what your real problem is, Dunja? Reeves's voice sliced through the silence like a scalpel. You've been doing this for so long that you've forgotten that these are real people sitting across from you. Not content, not punchlines. You've been doing this for so long that you've forgotten that these are real people sitting across from you, not just content for your show. Hayali tried to laugh again, but it sounded more like a nervous cough. Keanu, maybe we should take a short commercial break. No, Reeves said decisively. He placed both hands firmly on the desk and leaned so far forward that he was now at eye level with the moderator. We're not going to a commercial break. You wanted this conversation on live television, so we're having it now. Let's talk about the real Dunja Hayali. An eerie silence fell over the studio. One could hear individual breaths. Several producers were already at the edge of the stage, but no one dared to intervene. Let's talk about how you've built your career on unbalancing other people, Reeves continued. His voice remained calm, but it was charged like a storm before an outbreak. You think just because you're behind this desk, just because it's your show, you can say what you want, to whom you want. Hayali's face had turned pale. Beads of sweat glistened on her forehead under the hot studio lights. Keanu, this is just entertainment. People expect a certain degree of, well, tension. Reeves laughed. It was a cold, bitter laugh, completely devoid of humor. Tension? Is that your definition when you try to break someone on live camera for 20 minutes? When you dig into their private stories, their family problems, just to get a few laughs? You call that entertainment? Hayali cast a pleading look at her director, but they too were frozen. I really didn't mean to offend you if I crossed a line there. If you crossed a line? Reeves straightened up to his full height, and suddenly Hayali looked even smaller in her chair. You didn't just cross the line, you trampled it with a running start. You used this entire interview to provoke me, and now that you're getting a reaction, you suddenly want to backtrack? Hayali's voice trembled slightly as she tried to counter. Maybe we just got off on the wrong foot. We can start over. Talk about your movie, your foundation. Now you want to talk about my work? Reeves's voice grew louder, filled with dumbfounded anger. After you've attacked my integrity, my psyche, and my private life for 15 minutes, do you seriously think we can just go back to business as usual? The audience began to murmur. Some explicitly pulled out their smartphones despite the ban. What was happening here was no longer an awkward interview. It was a moment in German television history, and everyone in the room felt it. Reeves began to pace back and forth in front of Hayali's desk like a caged lion. You sit behind this desk night after night, and you think you're untouchable, that you can say whatever you want because you're the host, because this is your territory. He then stopped abruptly and fixed the moderator with a look that would have made even the toughest film critics nervous. I've faced some of the most challenging situations in the film industry. I've experienced pressure you can't imagine. But you know what all that has taught me? How to stand up to bullies. Hayali was now visibly trembling. Her usual composure evaporated. Keanu, please, let's just what? Reeves's voice became even more dominant. Pretend nothing happened? Laugh it off. Move on to the next segment where you can tear the next guest apart. Reeves's voice filled every corner of the silent studio. How many people have sat in this chair and felt worse after the interview than before because of your questions? How many have gone home and had to explain to their families why a TV moderator on public television spread rumors about their private lives? Hayali tried to regain control one last time. This is my show, Keanu. I think it's maybe time that you... Reeves's laugh was now icy and terrifyingly honest. Because it's your show, you think you're allowed to treat people however you like? Is that your principle? Invite someone as a guest and then humiliate them in front of an audience just for everyone to laugh? Suddenly, Reeves slammed his hand on the desk with full force. The bang made Hayali flinch. Some audience members audibly gasped. Do you know what your show really is, Dunja? Reeves leaned forward again. A platform for a mediocre journalist who feels strong when she dismantles people who have more character than she does. The words hit Hayali like physical blows. Her face changed from ashen white to red. Her hands clenched the desk. You want to know something about discipline and character, Dunja? You want to know what it's like to stay in a role? Reeves's gaze burned into the moderator. I'm not in a role. This is not acting. This is me, Keanu Reeves, and I'm telling you exactly what I think of you and your pathetic excuse for a talk show. Hayali's voice was barely audible as she finally whispered, Security? I think we need security. Reeves straightened up with a bitter, calm smile. So you call security because your guest is telling the truth? Because I'm no longer playing your game? The entire studio held its breath. Even the camera operator stood motionless, captivated by what was unfolding before their eyes. Here's what's going to happen now, Dunja, Reeves said, his voice sinking back into that dangerously calm whisper. I'm going to finish what I have to say and you're going to listen because for the first time in your career, you are being confronted with the consequences of your behavior. Reeves began to remove his microphone. His movements were calm, slow, almost solemn. And then I'm going to leave this stage, and you can explain to your audience and your network why one of the most respected actors in Hollywood just exposed you live. Hayali made one last desperate attempt to save herself. Keanu, we can edit this. We can cut all of this out. Reeves' voice exploded, this time with a thundering rage. You really think that's just going to go away? That you can cut that out and no one will notice? Dunja, this is live. Millions of people just saw who you really are. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the studio knew that this was a moment that would go down in television history. Hayali sat there petrified, her face a mixture of fear and humiliation, and Reeves stood there like a judge delivering his verdict. Do you know what the real tragedy is, Dunja? Reeves's voice was now cold, calculated, and more terrifying than any previous anger. You once had talent, back before you lost yourself in your own power, before you decided that humiliating people was easier than being truly good at your job. Hayali's mouth opened, then closed again like a fish gasping for air. Not a word came out. Her usual wit, her repertoire of excuses, all erased. Reeves took a step closer to the desk. I came prepared, Dunja. Before I even agreed to come here, I watched hours of your old interviews. Do you know what I saw? He began to walk again, this time calmly, controlled, like a hunter circling his prey. You treat guests differently. The A-listers, those with real power in this industry. With them, you're compliant. You laugh at every joke. You nod at every mundane anecdote. You make them feel welcome. You play the charmer. Reeves paused briefly, then continued. But the lesser-known guests, some audience members now held their phones openly visible. No one tried to stop them anymore. The director had long given up. What was happening here would be all over social media in a matter of minutes. And you know what's even worse? Reeves stopped directly in front of the desk. You've built an entire culture around this behavior. Other moderators are copying you because You've shown them that you can get ratings with cruelty. You've made this kind of television acceptable, where it's about humiliating people on live camera. Hayali finally found her voice, though it was barely audible. Keanu, I really didn't mean to. To, Reeves interrupted her sharply, his voice like a scalpel. Not so that you hurt someone, not so that you destroy careers, not so that people no longer dare to appear on shows like yours. He leaned forward slightly. You didn't want to, but you did it anyway, again and again, because it worked, because it gets clicks, because it gives you power. Hayali made an attempt to stand up, perhaps to regain control, but Reeves's presence made her sink back into the chair. Sit down. The tone was so calm, so determined that Dunja immediately sat back down. I'm not finished yet. The audience was completely captivated. Some leaned forward as if they were not in a talk show, but in a cinematic thriller. Even the usual rustling of papers or the quiet whispering of the technicians had ceased. Do you know what truly makes me angry? Reeves now whispered quickly, but every sound was crystal clear in the room. It's not just about today. It's about the fact that you do this regularly to people who can't defend themselves. Young talents who are grateful for any camera, who let you do whatever you want because they think it's part of the game. Suddenly, Reeves grabbed the backrest of his own chair and turned it with a swift movement toward the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have seen tonight was not just an interview. You have seen a moderator try to destroy a guest's dignity just for the sake of entertainment. He pointed a hand at Hayali without looking. This woman here earns millions a year for sitting behind a desk and attacking people who are supposed to be her guests. She invites people as guests and then makes money by humiliating them on live camera. She has made herself untouchable for years, or so she thought. Hayali made one last attempt to save her dignity. Security, please escort Mr. Reeves out. Security! Reeves slowly turned to her. His smile was icy cold. You call security because your guest is telling you the truth. Truth, because I'm not playing your game anymore? Hayali's voice trembled. This is my show, and I'm asking you to leave. Your show, Reeves repeated with a calm voice. Yes, Dunja, it's your show, and after tonight, everyone will know exactly what kind of show you're really running. Reeves began to remove his microphone, slowly, deliberately, solemnly. You know what's beautiful about live television, Dunja? You can't undo any of it. Not a word, not a moment of your cowardice. Everything was broadcast live to millions of people. The moderator looked desperately at her producers, but they too had no idea what to do. This was long past any editorial guidelines. And now I'll tell you what's going to happen next. Reeves carefully placed the microphone on the desk. I'm going to leave this stage, and you will stay here and explain to your audience and your network why one of the most respected people in Hollywood just exposed you as a bully. Live. Reeves took a step back from the desk. For the first time since the confrontation began, Hayali found a remnant of her voice. That was unprofessional, Keanu. You've humiliated yourself tonight. Reeves laughed, a short, bitter, cold laugh. Humiliated myself? I stood up to a bully, one who has been hiding behind this desk for years, humiliating people who can't defend themselves. If that's a humiliation, then I wear it with pride. He turned to the audience, now with the full power of his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, you came here tonight to see a normal interview. Instead, you've seen what happens when someone finally says no to a tyrant. Some audience members began to clap hesitantly. Then a louder applause followed. Hayali's face changed color again, this time to ashen white. She understood. Even her own audience was turning against her. Reeves now turned directly to the cameras. And to everyone watching at home, remember what you saw tonight. Just because someone has a platform, just because they're on television, doesn't give them the right to treat others disrespectfully. Reeves slowly walked toward the exit, but he turned around one last time. And Dunja, the next time you ask someone about their private life, their relationships, or their mental health, ask yourself if you'd want your family to be treated that way. Hayali tried to have the last word one last time. Keanu, you're making a mistake. This will cost you your career. Reeves stood in the spotlights, his shadow large and calm on the stage. No, Dunja, this will haunt your career. I am an artist. I have delivered, I have earned respect, and people will remember my work. But you will be remembered as the moderator who was dismantled live on television by her own guest. With these words, Keanu Reeves left the stage. Dunja Hayali was left alone, the audience murmured. The cameras kept rolling, and her professional dismantling was complete. She sat there wordlessly for a long time, opened her mouth and closed it again. No gag, no cut could save this moment. Finally, she looked into the camera and whispered, "We'll be right back after the commercial break." But everyone in the studio and everyone at home knew that nothing would ever be the same again. What we experienced today was more than just a dispute on television. It was a moment of truth, raw, unvarnished, and long overdue. If this confrontation moved you as much as it did us, then don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any more gripping stories from the world of stars, media, and power plays. Leave a comment. What do you think? Did Keanu Reeves do the right thing, or was it a step too far? Subscribe, like, share, and until the next chapter of Reality Behind the Spotlight.